The whiskey burned going down, but Violet Easton barely tasted it anymore after 3 years working the saloon floor. She set the empty glass on the mahogany bar and smiled at the portly merchant who had just bought her the drink, her third of the evening, though he did not know she had been pouring most of them into the potted plant near table 7. Fort Smith, Arkansas in the summer of 1878 was hot as blazes, and the Silver Star Saloon felt like the devil's own parlor with all the bodies packed inside on a Saturday night. The piano player hammered out a cheerful tune while boots stomped on the wooden floor and men called for more whiskey, more cards, more everything. "Another round, sweetheart." The merchant leaned close, his breath reeking of cheap cigars and cheaper liquor. Violet had learned to hold her smile through worse. "You are too kind, Mr. Patterson." She touched his arm lightly, the practiced gesture of a woman who knew how to make men feel important without promising them anything. The saloon girls did not sell their bodies here, not like some establishments. They sold conversation, laughter, the illusion that these dusty cowboys and traveling salesmen mattered to someone pretty. Violet had become very good at selling illusions. Mr. Patterson signaled the bartender, a grizzled man named Chuck, who had been working the Silver Star since before Violet arrived. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid and slid them across the polished wood. Violet picked hers up, raising it to her lips while watching Patterson drain his own. This one she actually drank, feeling the familiar warmth spread through her chest. Something tasted odd, though, bitter beneath the usual burn. She frowned slightly. "You all right, darling?" Patterson asked, but his voice sounded strange, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. "I think I need some air." Violet set down the glass, suddenly aware that her fingers felt thick and clumsy. The room tilted sideways, righting itself with effort. "Excuse me." She stood, and the floor rushed up to meet her. Strong hands caught her arms, but they were not Patterson's hands. These belonged to someone else, someone whose face swam in and out of focus. She tried to speak, to call for help, but her tongue felt like lead in her mouth. "Poor thing has had too much to drink," a voice said, sympathetic and false. "We will get her upstairs to rest." The world became a blur of movement and shadow. Violet tried to fight, but her limbs would not obey. Someone was carrying her up the back stairs, away from the noise and lights. She managed to turn her head, catching a glimpse of 2 men, neither of them Patterson. One was tall with a sharp nose, the other shorter with mean eyes. She did not recognize either of them, her room. They had brought her to her small room above the saloon. Through the fog in her mind, terror cut sharp and clear. She tried to scream, but only a whimper emerged. The tall man laid her on the bed while the short one began rifling through her belongings. "Where does she keep it?" the short one hissed. "Check her pockets." Rough hands turned her over, searching her dress. They found the small leather pouch she kept tied to her waist beneath her petticoat, the one that held every dollar she had saved in 3 years of smiling and pouring drinks and dreaming of something better. $243, enough to buy a train ticket east and start over, maybe open a dress shop like she had always wanted. "Got it," the tall man said, triumphant. They took her mother's silver locket from the dresser, the only thing of value she owned besides the money. They took the pearl earrings she had been given by a generous patron 2 Christmases ago. They took the embroidered shawl that had belonged to her grandmother. They went through her trunk and took everything worth taking, and Violet could only lie there, helpless, watching her life disappear into their greedy hands. "Think anyone will believe her if she remembers?" the short man asked. "Who is going to believe a saloon girl?" The tall man laughed. "Besides, by the time whatever they put in her drink wears off, we will be halfway to Texas." They left her there on the bed, and the darkness finally claimed her completely. Violet woke to sunlight stabbing through her thin curtains and a head that felt like it had been kicked by a mule. She groaned, rolling onto her side, and the events of the previous night came rushing back in sickening clarity. She lurched upright, ignoring the way the room spun, and looked around her small space. Empty. They had taken everything. She stumbled to the trunk at the foot of her bed, throwing it open with shaking hands. Her few dresses remained, too worthless to steal, but everything else was gone. The money, the locket, all of it. No, no, no. Violet pressed her hands to her face, fighting the urge to vomit. 3 years of work, of saving every spare penny, of planning and hoping. Gone in one night because she had been stupid enough to actually drink the whiskey instead of dumping it in the plant. She needed to tell someone. The law. There was a federal courthouse right here in Fort Smith, presided over by the famous Judge Isaac Parker, known for his harsh sentences and commitment to justice. Surely someone would help her. Violet splashed water on her face from the basin, changed into a clean dress, and made her way downstairs on unsteady legs. The saloon was empty this early, chairs still turned upside down on tables, the smell of stale beer and tobacco hanging in the air. She found the saloon owner, Mr. Gregory, in his office counting receipts. "Mr. Gregory, I need to report a crime." Her voice came out stronger than she felt. He looked up, his jowly face creasing in annoyance. "What kind of crime?" "2 men drugged my drink last night and robbed me. They took all my savings and my mother's locket. I need to go to the marshal." Mr. Gregory leaned back in his chair, studying her with cold eyes. "You sure you were not just drunk, girl? You saloon girls do tend to overindulge." "I know what happened to me." Violet straightened her spine. "Someone put something in my drink and 2 men carried me upstairs and robbed me blind." "You got any proof of this?" He pulled a cigar from his desk drawer, taking his time lighting it. "Any witnesses?" "I was unconscious. That is the whole point." "So you want me to believe that someone drugged you, though you got no proof, and robbed you of money that I have never seen you have?" He blew smoke in her direction. "Sounds to me like you lost your money gambling or spent it on something foolish, and now you want to blame someone else." Anger flared hot in her chest. "I am telling you the truth. Truth is what you can prove, girl. You got nothing but a story. Now I suggest you get yourself together and get ready for tonight's shift. We open in 12 hours. Violet wanted to argue, to scream, to make him listen, but she could see it would do no good. She turned and walked out, her jaw clenched so tight it ached. The federal marshal's office sat 2 streets over, a sturdy building with a sign proclaiming it the seat of law in this part of Arkansas. Violet pushed through the door into a cramped space that smelled of gun, oil, and coffee. A deputy sat at a desk, his feet propped up, reading a newspaper. "Excuse me, I need to report a robbery." The deputy glanced up, took in her appearance, and his expression shifted from bored to dismissive. "What got stolen?" "2 men drugged my drink at the Silver Star last night and took all my savings. $243, plus a silver locket and some other valuables." "You got names for these men?" I had never seen them before. One was tall with a sharp nose, the other shorter with dark eyes. She described them as best she could, though the details felt frustratingly vague even to her own ears. The deputy dropped his feet to the floor with a thud. "Let me get this straight. You are a saloon girl who got drunk, and now your money is missing, and you want us to track down 2 men you cannot properly identify." "I was not drunk, I was drugged. There is a difference." "Sure there is." He picked up his newspaper again. "Look, miss, even if I believed you, which I am not saying I do, we got real crimes to deal with. Murders, horse theft, that sort of thing. Some girl losing her tip money does not exactly top our list. It was not tip money, it was my life savings." Well, maybe you should have kept it in a bank instead of carrying it around a saloon. He rattled the newspaper, making it clear the conversation was over. Now, if you do not mind, I got work to do. Violet walked out into the morning heat, her hands trembling with rage and humiliation. They did not believe her. Nobody would believe her. She was just a saloon girl, and saloon girls were not the kind of women whose words carried weight. She spent the rest of the day asking around the saloon, trying to find anyone who remembered seeing her with those two men. The other girls shrugged, said it had been too crowded to notice. The bartender, Chuck, said he remembered pouring her drinks but could not say if anyone had tampered with them. The patrons from the previous night were long gone, scattered to the wind. By the time evening arrived and she had to return to work, Violet felt hollowed out, scraped clean of everything but a dull, aching despair. She pinned on her brightest smile and went back down to the saloon floor, pouring drinks and laughing at jokes that were not funny, all while her mind spun in desperate circles. $243. 3 years of her life. Gone. She was refilling a Cowboy's whiskey glass when the door swung open, and a man walked in who made her pause mid-pour. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that needed a trim and eyes the color of creek water after a storm. Dust covered his clothes and his boots looked like they had traveled 1,000 miles. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was and felt no need to prove it. He scanned the room once, then headed for the bar, settling onto a stool at the far end. Violet finished pouring the Cowboy's drink and made her way over to the newcomer. Up close, she could see the sun-weathered lines around his eyes, the strong jaw shadowed with stubble. He looked to be in his mid-20s, probably a few years older than her own 22. "What can I get you?" she asked, summoning her professional warmth. "Whiskey, the good stuff if you have it." His voice was deep, with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas or maybe Oklahoma territory. "We have it." She signaled to Chuck, who poured from the bottle they kept for customers willing to pay extra. "You just get into town about an hour ago." He accepted the glass and took a slow sip, savoring it. "Been on the trail for 2 weeks. Figure I earned a decent drink. Cattle drive, horse trading. Got a string of Mustangs I am bringing up from Texas to sell to the Army. They are stabled at the livery now, probably eating their weight in oats." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and more open. "I am Nathaniel Hollis, but most folks call me Nate. Violet Easton." She found herself smiling back, a real smile this time instead of the painted-on version. "Welcome to Fort Smith." "Thank you kindly." Nate took another sip of whiskey. "This is a nice place, clean, well-run. Some of the saloons I have been in lately would not pass muster with a pig farmer. Mr. Gregory keeps things respectable." "Mostly." The word stuck in her throat, bitter. Gregory had not cared enough to believe her about the robbery, but he certainly cared about collecting his share of her nightly earnings. Something must have shown on her face because Nate's expression shifted, became more attentive. "You all right, Miss Easton?" "I am fine." She forced brightness back into her voice. "Can I get you anything else?" "Another whiskey when you get a chance. And maybe some company if you are not too busy." That was how it worked. Men bought drinks, bought conversation. Violet nodded and fetched the bottle, pouring him a second glass before sliding onto the stool beside him. The saloon was only half full tonight, a Sunday crowd of regulars who did not need much tending. "So what brings you to Fort Smith besides the horse trading?" she asked, falling into the familiar rhythm of small talk. "Passing through, mostly. Heard Judge Parker was cleaning up the territory, making it safer for honest folks. Figured I would see if the stories were true." Nate swirled the whiskey in his glass. "What about you? You from around here?" "Tennessee, originally. Came west 3 years ago after my parents died. Thought I would find opportunity out here." She heard the bitterness creeping into her voice again and tried to tamp it down. "Found this instead. Nothing wrong with honest work." "No, I suppose not." Violet looked at her hands, at the calluses from carrying heavy trays and the slight stain of tobacco on her fingers from rolling cigarettes for customers. "I had plans, though. Wanted to save up enough to go back east, maybe open a dress shop. I am good with a needle. Had plans." Nate caught the past tense. Something change, she should not tell him. He was a stranger, just another cowboy passing through, and she had already learned that her story carried no weight. But something about the way he listened, really listened, made her want to talk. "Someone drugged my drink last night and robbed me." The words came out in a rush. "Took every penny I had saved plus my mother's locket. When I tried to report it, nobody believed me. The marshal, my boss, nobody, because I am just a saloon girl and saloon girls do not matter much." Nate set down his glass, his full attention on her now. "Tell me what happened. All of it." So she did. She told him about the merchant buying her drinks, about the bitter taste in the whiskey, about waking up to find two men rifling through her belongings. She described the men as best she could, described the feeling of helplessness as they took everything she had worked for. When she finished, tears were threatening at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. "I know how it sounds," she said. "I know it looks like I just got drunk and lost track of my money, but I swear to you that is not what happened. I was drugged and robbed, and nobody will believe me." Nate was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with those storm-colored eyes. Then he said, "I believe you." Violet felt something crack inside her chest. "You do?" "I do. I have been around enough to know when someone is telling the truth." He reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and solid. "And I have seen men like you described before. There are thieves working the river towns, drugging folks and robbing them. Usually they hit gamblers or merchants, anyone who might be carrying cash. I am sorry they targeted you. Nobody else believes me." Her voice came out thick with emotion. "Then nobody else is paying attention." Nate squeezed her hand once before releasing it. "You remember anything else about these men? Any distinguishing marks, scars, the way they talked?" Violet closed her eyes, forcing herself back into that horrible foggy memory. "The tall one had a ring on his right hand, silver with a red stone. And the short one, he had an accent, not heavy but there, maybe Irish. That is good. That is helpful." Nate pulled a small notebook from his pocket and began writing. "Where did they say they were headed?" "Texas. They said they would be halfway to Texas by the time I woke up. So probably heading south out of town. There are only a couple of roads they would take." He tucked the notebook away and stood, dropping coins on the bar to cover his drinks. "I am going to ask around, see if anyone else noticed these men or saw which way they went." Violet stared at him. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." "Because someone should." He settled his hat on his head. "And because I cannot stand a thief. Where can I find you tomorrow? I am here most days. We open at noon. I will come by after I do some checking around." Nate tipped his hat to her. "Do not lose hope, Miss Easton. Sometimes justice just takes a little longer than we would like." He walked out, and Violet sat there at the bar, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Someone believed her. A complete stranger believed her when nobody else would. Chuck came over, wiping down the bar with a rag. "You want to be careful with that one." "What do you mean?" "Men like that, they are trouble. Handsome drifter rides into town, makes big promises, then disappears with whatever he can carry." Chuck gave her a pointed look. "You have been through enough without adding heartbreak to the list." He is just being kind. But even as Violet said it, she felt a flutter of something dangerous in her chest. Hope, maybe, or something even more foolish. The rest of the night dragged by in a blur of drinks and forced conversation. Violet kept glancing at the door, though she knew Nate would not be back tonight. When the saloon finally closed at 2 in the morning, she trudged upstairs to her ransacked room and lay awake, replaying their conversation. "I believe you," 3 simple words, but they felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. The next morning, Violet woke late and groggy. She splashed water on her face and braided her hair, trying to tamp down the nervous energy thrumming through her. Nate had probably been just being polite. He would not really come back. Why would he? But when she made her way downstairs just after noon, he was already there, sitting at the same spot at the bar, sipping coffee this time instead of whiskey. He smiled when he saw her. "Morning, Miss Easton, morning." She slid onto the stool beside him, her heart doing foolish things in her chest. "Did you find out anything?" "Some. I talked to the livery owner, the stagecoach office, few other folks. 2 men matching your description left town yesterday morning on horseback, heading south. The livery owner said they were in a hurry, paid double to get their horses ready fast. That has to be them." Excitement and anger warred in Violet's chest. Did anyone know their names? No, but the stagecoach clerk said one of them tried to buy tickets before they ended up getting horses instead. He remembered because the man paid with small bills, lots of them, like he had come into money recently. Nate's jaw tightened. "Your money." "So what do we do? Go to the marshal?" "I already tried, told him what I found out. He said it was not enough to go on, that he could not spare men to chase down every robbery claim." The brief spark of hope dimmed. "So that is it then. They get away with it." "I did not say that." Nate set down his coffee cup, his expression serious. "I am going after them." Violet's breath caught. "What?" "I am a decent tracker and I know the roads between here and Texas. If they are heading south, I can catch up to them." He looked at her steadily. "And when I do, I will get your money and your locket back." "You cannot do that." "You do not owe me anything. We just met." "I know. But like I said, I cannot stand a thief, and besides," he smiled slightly, "I like you, Miss Easton. I would like to think we might be friends." Friends. The word felt both insufficient and terrifying. Violet barely knew this man, but something about him made her want to trust, want to believe. "How long would you be gone?" "Hard to say. A week, maybe 2, depending on how far they got. I can move fast with just 1 horse." "What about your Mustangs?" "I thought you were here to sell them to the Army." "I already made the deal this morning. The Army is sending someone to pick them up tomorrow, so I am free to ride out." Nate reached out and took her hand again, and this time he did not let go. "I want to help you, Violet, if you will let me." She looked down at their joined hands, at his long fingers wrapped around hers, calloused from years of working with horses and rope. This was crazy. He was a stranger, and she was a saloon girl, and none of this made any sense. But when she looked up and met his eyes, she saw something there that made her chest ache with longing. He saw her, not just another pretty face to flirt with, not a fallen woman to pity or use. He saw her as a person worth believing, worth helping. "I want to come with you," she heard herself say. Nate's eyebrows rose. "Violet, it is going to be hard riding, camping rough, moving fast. It is not a pleasure trip." "I know, but it is my money, my locket. I want to be there when you get it back." She squeezed his hand. "I can ride. I grew up on a farm in Tennessee. I am not some delicate flower who will faint at the first sign of discomfort." He studied her for a long moment, then slowly smiled. "All right. We leave tomorrow at first light. Bring only what you can carry on a horse, and you will need different clothes. That dress will not do for trail riding." "I will figure something out." Violet felt a wild rush of exhilaration mixed with terror. She was really doing this. Running off with a cowboy she had just met to chase down thieves across the territory. It was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and she was not entirely sure which. "Meet me at the livery at dawn," Nate said. "I will have everything else we need." Violet spent the rest of the day in a flurry of preparation. She went to the general store and bought a split riding skirt and a simple cotton shirt with some of the tips she had saved in her pocket. She packed her saddlebag with the few belongings she had left, rolled up her one good blanket, and tried not to think too hard about what she was doing. That evening, she told Mr. Gregory she was quitting. He blustered and threatened, said she owed him for room and board, but Violet stood her ground. She had earned every penny he had ever paid her, and more. When he finally realized she was serious, he told her she had until morning to clear out her room and not to bother coming back. Fine. She had no intention of coming back. She lay awake most of the night, listening to the sounds of the saloon below slowly fade to silence. When the first gray light of dawn crept through her window, she rose, dressed in her new riding clothes, and shouldered her pack. She looked around the small room one last time, this space that had been her home for 3 years, then walked out without looking back. Nate was waiting at the livery as promised, standing beside 2 saddled horses. One was a big bay gelding that she assumed was his, the other a smaller paint mare with kind eyes. "Morning," he said, smiling at her. "You ready, as I will ever be." Violet approached the paint mare, running a hand down her neck. "She is beautiful. Her name is Rosie. She's got a smooth gait and a steady temperament. She will treat you right." Nate helped her secure her bag to the saddle, his hands quick and competent. "We will follow the main road south for a while, then cut over toward the Potow River. If those men are heading for Texas, they will likely follow the water." They mounted up and rode out of Fort Smith as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Violet looked back once at the town receding behind them, then turned her face forward. Whatever lay ahead, it had to be better than what she was leaving behind. The first day of riding was hard. Violet had told the truth about knowing how to ride, but it had been years since she spent this much time in the saddle. By the time Nate called a halt as the sun was setting, her legs felt like rubber and her back ached from her shoulders to her hips. "How are you holding up?" Nate asked as he helped her dismount. "I am fine." She tried not to wince as her feet hit the ground. "You are a terrible liar." But he said it gently, without mockery. "We will take it a little easier tomorrow. I pushed us hard today to make up distance." They made camp in a small clearing near a creek. Nate tended to the horses while Violet gathered firewood, grateful for a task that let her walk off some of the stiffness. When she returned, he had a fire going and was digging through his saddlebags. "Hope you like beans and hardtack. It is not fancy, but it is filling. Sounds wonderful." And surprisingly, it did. Violet was hungrier than she had been in days. They ate in comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them. Night fell quickly out here, away from the glow of town lights. The stars emerged one by one until the sky was thick with them, more stars than Violet had ever seen. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "Yeah." But when she glanced over, Nate was looking at her instead of the sky. Their eyes met and held for a long moment before he looked away, clearing his throat. "You should get some sleep. We are riding out early." Violet spread her blanket near the fire and lay down, using her pack as a pillow. It was not remotely comfortable, but exhaustion won out quickly. She drifted off listening to the sound of the creek and the soft nickering of the horses. She woke once in the deep part of night and saw Nate sitting up by the fire, keeping watch. Something about that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in a long time. She closed her eyes and slept. The next several days fell into a pattern. They woke before dawn, ate a quick breakfast, and rode until midday when they would stop to rest the horses. Then more riding until evening, when they would make camp and fall into their bedrolls exhausted. The landscape gradually shifted around them, the wooded hills giving way to more open country marked by winding rivers and scattered homesteads. Nate proved to be good company. He talked easily about his life, about growing up on a ranch in Texas, learning to break horses from his father, eventually striking out on his own to trade Mustangs up and down the territory. He asked about her life too, really asked and listened to the answers. Violet found herself telling him things she had not talked about in years. Her childhood on the Tennessee farm, her parents who had died of fever within days of each other. Her journey west filled with naive hopes and dreams that slowly died under the reality of what life was like for a woman alone with no money or connections. "You are stronger than you think," Nate said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Not many people would have survived what you have been through. I did not have much choice. There is always a choice. You could have given up, turned bitter and mean, but you did not. You kept working, kept saving, kept hoping for something better." He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling up into the darkness. "That takes courage." Violet felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. "You do not know me that well. I know enough." His gaze, when he looked at her, was intense, searching. "You are a good person, Violet Easton, and you deserve better than what those thieves took from you." The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. She had been trying hard not to notice how handsome he was, how his shirt pulled across his shoulders when he lifted the saddle, how his rare smiles made her feel warm all over. This was not supposed to be about attraction. She was out here to get her money back, to reclaim her life. Getting tangled up with a cowboy, no matter how kind or how handsome, was just asking for heartbreak. But her heart did not seem to be listening to logic. On the 5th day, they found their first real lead. They had stopped at a small trading post along the Potow River to buy supplies, and the owner, a wizened old man with sharp eyes, remembered the two men Violet described. "Came through here 3, maybe 4 days ago," he said, scratching his bristled chin. "Bought whiskey and jerky, paid in small bills. The Irish one, he tried to sell me a silver locket, said it belonged to his dead mother." Violet's hands clenched into fists. "My mother's locket. I did not buy it. Told him I do not deal in personal items like that, too much chance they are stolen." The old man gave her a sympathetic look. They headed south along the river road. "If you ride hard, you might catch up before they cross into Texas." They thanked him and rode out immediately, pushing the horses as fast as they dared. Violet felt her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and dread. They were close. After all this riding, all this hoping, they were actually close. But what would happen when they caught up? Nate had a gun on his hip, a well-worn Colt revolver that looked like it had seen use. Did he know how to use it? Would there be violence? Violet realized with a start that she did not even know if Nate had ever shot anyone, if he was capable of the kind of confrontation they might be riding toward. That night, as they made camp, she voiced her concerns. "Nate, when we find these men, what are you planning to do?" He looked up from where he was tending the fire. "Get your money and lock it back. But how? Are you going to fight them, shoot them?" "I am hoping it does not come to that." He settled back on his heels. Thieves are usually cowards at heart. Faced with someone willing to stand up to them, they often just hand over the goods and run. "But I will do whatever it takes to get back what is yours. I do not want you getting hurt because of me." Something softened in his expression. "Violet, I knew what I was signing up for when I decided to come after them. I can handle myself in a fight if it comes to that, but I am going to try to handle this smart, not stupid. Promise me you will be careful. I promise." He reached across the fire and took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. And you promise me that if things go bad, you will get on Rosie and ride for help. Do not try to be a hero. I promise. Though even as she said it, Violet was not sure it was a promise she could keep. The thought of leaving him to face danger alone made her chest tight with fear. They sat there holding hands across the fire until the logs burned down to embers. When they finally let go and settled into their bedrolls, Violet lay awake staring at the stars, her palms still tingling from his touch. 2 days later, they found them. It was mid-afternoon, and they were following the river road through a stretch of scrubby bottomland. Nate had been riding ahead, scouting, when he suddenly raised his hand and wheeled his horse around, galloping back to Violet. There is a camp up ahead, maybe a quarter mile. 2 men, 2 horses, it could be them. Violet's heart leaped into her throat. What do? We approach careful. Let me do the talking at first. Nate checked his gun, making sure it sat loose in the holster. Stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood, she nodded, not trusting her voice. They rode forward slowly, the horses picking their way through the scrub. As they came around a bend in the road, Violet saw the camp. A thin stream of smoke rose from a small fire. 2 figures sat beside it, one tall and lean, the other shorter and stockier. Even from a distance, she recognized them. That is them, she whispered. Nate nodded. He raised his voice, calling out in a friendly tone. Hello, the camp. We are travelers looking for directions. Mind if we come in? The 2 men jumped to their feet. The tall one put his hand on his gun but did not draw. We are not looking for company. This will not take but a minute. Nate rode forward calmly, Violet following close behind. As they got closer, she could see the men's faces clearly. The tall one with the sharp nose, the short one with mean eyes. Her hands started shaking and she gripped the reins tighter. I said we are not looking for company. The tall man's voice turned hard. Best you move along. Funny thing, Nate said conversationally, reining in his horse about 20 feet from their fire. We are looking for 2 men who robbed a lady in Fort Smith about a week ago, drugged her drink and stole everything she had. You would not happen to know anything about that, would you? The short man went pale. The tall one's face hardened. You have got the wrong people. We have not been anywhere near Fort Smith. That is strange, because the trading post owner back up the river said 2 men matching your descriptions came through trying to sell a silver locket. Nate's voice stayed calm, but Violet could see the tension in his shoulders. And the lady you robbed is sitting right here beside me, and she recognizes you both. The tall man's hand moved toward his gun. You are making a mistake, friend. The only mistake here is yours. Nate's voice went cold. You robbed the wrong woman. Now you are going to give back everything you took, and then you are going to get on your horses and ride far away. And if I ever hear of you pulling something like this again, I will hunt you down myself. There are 2 of us and only one of you. The short man found his voice, trying for bravado. 2 of you and 1 of me, Nate agreed. But I am the one who is fast with a gun, and you are the ones who are thieves, not fighters. So ask yourself if that money is really worth dying over. Violet held her breath. The moment stretched out, taut as a wire. The tall man's hand hovered over his gun. Nate sat motionless in the saddle, his hand resting casually near his own weapon, but there was nothing casual about the look in his eyes. Finally, the short man broke. Jack, it is not worth it. Just give her the money back. Shut up, Irish. But the tall one's voice lacked conviction. Give them the money, Jack. The short man, Irish, was sweating despite the mild temperature. We can get more. We cannot get more if we are dead. For a long, terrible moment, Violet thought the tall man would draw anyway. Then, cursing viciously, he stalked over to his saddlebag and pulled out a leather pouch. He threw it on the ground halfway between them. There, take it and get out of here. And the locket. And the pearls and anything else you took. Nate had not moved, his hand still hovering near his gun. Cursing again, Jack dug through the bag and produced the items, tossing them on the ground with the pouch. "Happy now? Violet, go get your things." Nate's voice was steady. Violet dismounted on shaking legs and walked forward. She felt the men's eyes on her as she knelt and gathered up her belongings. The leather pouch felt reassuringly heavy. She opened it quickly, seeing the stack of bills inside. Her money. She grabbed the locket, the pearl earrings, even her grandmother's shawl, everything they had taken. "Now get on your horses and ride south," Nate said. "And if I see you anywhere near Fort Smith or hear about you robbing anyone else, next time I will not be so generous." The two men mounted up, Jack still muttering curses. They galloped off down the road, leaving their camp and fire behind. Violet watched them go until they disappeared around a bend. Then she started to shake. Nate dismounted and came to her side, his hand on her shoulder. "Are you all right? You got it back?" She looked down at the pouch in her hands, at the locket. "You actually got it all back?" "That was the plan." He smiled, but she could see the tension still in his frame. He had been prepared to draw on those men, maybe kill them, to get back what was hers. "Thank you." The words felt inadequate for what he had just done. "Thank you. You are welcome." His hand moved from her shoulder to cup her cheek, and Violet's breath caught. "I told you I would get it back for you." They stood there for a moment, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, see the flecks of green in his gray eyes. Then Nate cleared his throat and stepped back. "We should make camp somewhere else, away from here, just in case they get brave and decide to come back." They rode for another hour before Nate declared a spot suitable, a small clearing with good sight lines and fresh water. As they made camp, Violet kept looking at the leather pouch, hardly believing it was real. "You should count it," Nate said. "Make sure it is all there." She opened the pouch and carefully counted the bills. $243, exactly what had been taken. Relief flooded through her so strongly she felt dizzy. "It is all here, every penny." "Good." Nate smiled at her across the fire. "So what are you going to do now?" Still planning on that dress shop back east, Violet realized she had not thought that far ahead. A week ago, that had been her only dream, her escape plan. But now, sitting here under the stars with this man who had believed her when nobody else would, who had ridden out and faced down thieves for her, the idea of going back east felt less appealing than it once had. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I suppose I should go back to Fort Smith, get my things sorted out. We could head back tomorrow if you want, or we could take our time, enjoy the journey." Nate was watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "What about you? Where are you headed next?" "Wherever I need to be." He poked at the fire. "I am a drifter by nature, Violet. I go where the work takes me. But I have been thinking lately that maybe it would be nice to stay in one place for a while, find something worth staying for." The way he said it, looking at her like that, made Violet's heart do somersaults in her chest. "Nate, I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other a week." He set down the stick and looked at her directly. "But I cannot shake the feeling that I was meant to walk into that saloon when I did, that I was meant to meet you, help you, maybe even meant for more than that if you are willing. I do not even know if I believe in meant to be." But her voice came out breathless. "Neither did I until I met you." Nate stood and came around the fire, kneeling beside her. "I like you, Violet. I like your strength, your determination, the way you smile even when things are hard. I like talking to you. I like sitting by the fire with you. I like just about everything about you. And I think maybe you might like me too." "I do." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "I like you a lot, but I do not know how this could work. You are a drifter and I need stability. I have spent 3 years scrambling just to survive. I cannot do that anymore." "Then do not." He took her hands in his. "Come with me. We will find a place to settle down, buy some land, start a horse ranch. You can still open your dress shop if you want, or we can figure out something else together. I am not asking you to keep scrambling. I am asking you to build something with me." Violet stared at him, her heart pounding. This was crazy. She barely knew this man. But somehow, after everything they had been through in the past week, she felt like she knew him better than people she had worked alongside for years. He had seen her at her lowest and believed in her. He had fought for her. He was offering her not just stability but partnership, a chance to build something that belonged to her. "That is a big decision," she said slowly. "I know. I am not asking for an answer right now, just think about it." Nate squeezed her hands gently. "But Violet, I want you to know something. I am falling for you. Hard and fast like a horse at full gallop. And I think you might be falling too." She was. She knew she had been fighting it for days. But hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I am scared," she admitted. "Me too." He smiled crookedly. "Scared I might be dreaming this whole thing. Scared you might say no. Scared I might mess this up somehow. But I think some things are worth being scared for." Violet looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, at the hope and vulnerability in his eyes. She thought about going back to Fort Smith, trying to find another job, starting over alone. Then she thought about what he was offering. A partner, a future, maybe even love. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, a question. Nate answered by pulling her closer, his hand sliding up to cup the back of her neck. The kiss deepened, growing more certain, more urgent. Violet felt like she was burning up from the inside, every nerve alive and singing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nate rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" he asked, his voice rough. "That is a maybe, leaning strongly toward yes." Violet laughed shakily. "But we should probably figure out some details first. Like where we would go, what we would do. Practical woman." But he was smiling as he said it. "All right, details. I have been thinking about settling in the Oklahoma Territory, maybe near Guthrie. Good land for horses, growing town with opportunities. We could find a place with some acreage, start small and build up. And the dress shop. And a dress shop in town if that is what you want. Or maybe you help with the horse business. I have seen you with Rosie. You have got good instincts." Nate traced his thumb along her jaw. "Point is, we build something together. Equal partners. Equal partners. Nobody had ever offered Violet that before. I would need to keep my money separate, at least at first, my nest egg. Of course. Your money is yours. I would never ask you to give that up." He looked offended at the very idea. "I've got some savings, too. We pool what we need for the land and supplies, keep the rest separate until we figure out how this is going to work. You have really thought this through." "I've had a lot of time to think while riding." He kissed her again, soft and sweet. "So what do you say? Want to take a chance on a cowboy?" Violet thought about everything she had been through, everything she had survived. She thought about her parents who had taught her to work hard and dream big. She thought about 3 years of smiling at drunk men and saving pennies and hoping for something better. And she looked at Nate, this man who had believed her, who had fought for her, who was offering her not just security but adventure, not just a home but a partner. "Yes," she said. "Let's build something together." Nate's smile was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Violet let herself fall into it, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, good things could happen to people like her. They sat by the fire long into the night, making plans and dreaming out loud. Nate talked about the horses he wanted to raise, wild mustangs that he would gentle and train. Violet talked about dresses she would sew, beautiful things that women could wear and feel special in. They talked about building a house, just small at first but sturdy, with a garden and a barn and room to grow. "Do you want children?" Nate asked at one point, his arm around her shoulders as they leaned back against a log. "Someday, maybe. Not right away. I want to get settled first, make sure we can actually make this work." Violet looked up at him. "What about you? I like the idea of kids, teaching them to ride, watching them grow up with land under their feet and sky over their heads." He kissed the top of her head. "But you are right. We take it one step at a time. Get settled, get married." "Married?" Violet's heart skipped. "Well, yeah, I mean, I am not asking you to just run off and live in sin with me." Nate pulled back to look at her. "Unless you would rather not get married, no, I want to. I just did not expect you to mention it so casually." "Nothing casual about it." His expression turned serious. "Violet, I know this is all happening fast, but I have never been more sure of anything. I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and build this life with you. If you will have me." It was too fast. It was crazy. They had known each other less than 2 weeks, but when Violet looked into his eyes, she saw her future there, bright and shining and real. "I will have you," she said softly, "and you can have me." They kissed again, sealing the promise, and when they finally settled into their bedrolls that night, Nate kept his close to hers, their hands linked in the space between. The journey back to Fort Smith took a week, and they made every moment count. They talked for hours as they rode, learning every detail of each other's lives. Violet learned that Nate loved thunderstorms and hated liver, that his mother had died when he was young, and his father had raised him and his 2 brothers alone. Nate learned that Violet could sing beautifully, but only when she thought no one was listening, that she had a weakness for honey cakes, that she had once wanted to be a school teacher before her parents died, and that dream became impossible. They also learned the rhythms of each other, the way Nate liked his coffee strong enough to strip paint, the way Violet needed a few minutes of quiet in the morning before she was ready to talk. They learned to work together, setting up camp and breaking it down with increasing efficiency. They learned to read each other's moods, to know when to push and when to give space. And they kissed, stolen moments throughout the day and long, lingering embraces by the fire at night. Violet had been kissed before, back when she was young and foolish and thought a boy's sweet words meant something. But this was different. When Nate kissed her, she felt cherished, desired, but also respected. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give, always pulling back when things got too heated, reminding her that they had time. "We do this right," he said one night when she had nearly climbed into his lap, both of them breathing hard. "I do not want you to have any regrets." "I would not regret it," Violet protested, but he was already gently setting her back on her own blanket. "Maybe not tonight, but I want our wedding night to be special. I want to do right by you." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Can you be patient with me?" She could, though it tested her in ways she had not expected. She had not realized how much she wanted him until she could not have him. They reached Fort Smith on a sunny afternoon, riding into town side by side. Violet felt like a different person than the one who had left. She sat straighter in the saddle, her hand resting on the leather pouch in her pocket. She had her money back. She had her freedom. And she had Nate. Their first stop was the Silver Star Saloon. Mr. Gregory was behind the bar when they walked in, and his face went through several expressions when he saw Violet, none of them welcoming. "I thought I told you not to come back. I am not here to work. I am here to tell you that you were wrong." Violet pulled out the leather pouch and set it on the bar. "I was robbed, just like I said, and we tracked down the thieves and got everything back." Gregory stared at the pouch, then at Nate standing beside her. "You went after them." "She did not have to," Nate said mildly. Because when she asked for help, you told her she was lying. The marshal told her she was lying. Nobody in this town would believe a saloon girl. So I believed her instead, and it turns out she was telling the truth all along. Gregory sputtered. Look, I am sorry if I did not take you seriously, but you have to understand. I do not have to understand anything. Violet cut him off. I just wanted you to know that you were wrong about me, and that I will not be coming back to work here or anywhere like it. I have got better things to do with my life. She turned and walked out, Nate following. Behind her, she could hear Gregory calling out some kind of explanation or apology, but she did not care enough to listen. That part of her life was over. Next, they went to the federal marshal's office. The same deputy was sitting at the same desk, looking just as bored as before. He glanced up when they entered, and Violet had the satisfaction of seeing his eyes widen when he recognized her. You, he said. Me, Violet agreed. Remember how you said I was just drunk and made up a story about being robbed? Well, we found the men who did it, got my money and belongings back. Thought you might want to know that there are thieves working the river towns, drugging people and robbing them, in case you ever feel like doing your job. The deputy's face reddened. Now look here. No, you look. A woman came to you for help, and you dismissed her because you thought she did not matter. How many other people have you turned away because you decided they were not worth your time? Violet leaned on his desk. You should be ashamed of yourself. They left him sputtering and walked out into the sunlight. Violet felt lighter than she had in years, like she had set down a burden she had been carrying too long. Feel good? Nate asked, grinning at her. Feel amazing. She slipped her hand into his. Now what? Now we find the land office and start looking for property in the Oklahoma Territory. And we find a preacher, because I meant what I said about marrying you before we do much more kissing like last night. Violet laughed, feeling giddy with possibility. You are going to make an honest woman of me. I am going to make a happy woman of you if you will let me. He pulled her close, right there on the street, and kissed her thoroughly. When they broke apart, Violet did not care who might have seen. They spent the next 2 days making arrangements. The land office had listings for properties in the Oklahoma Territory, and they found one that sounded perfect. 20 acres near Guthrie with a creek running through it, a small cabin already on the property, and a barn that needed work but had good bones. The price was fair, and between Violet's savings and Nate's, they had enough to buy it outright with money left over for supplies and stock. They also found a preacher, a kindly old Methodist minister who agreed to marry them in his small church. Violet wished her parents could be there, but she wore her mother's locket to the ceremony, and that felt like having them close. She had no wedding dress, just her best day dress cleaned and pressed, but Nate looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. They stood before the preacher in the empty church, just the two of them and an old woman who served as witness, and spoke vows that felt more real and binding than any contract. I take you, Violet Easton, to be my wife. I promise to believe in you, to stand beside you, to build our life together as equal partners. I promise to love you in good times and bad, in plenty and in want. I promise to be yours faithfully, for as long as we both shall live. Violet's voice shook when she spoke her own vows, but the words came from her heart. I take you, Nathaniel Hollis, to be my husband. I promise to trust you, to support you, to share this adventure with you. I promise to love you with everything I have, to be your partner and your friend. I promise to be yours faithfully, for as long as we both shall live. The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and when Nate kissed her, it felt like coming home. They spent their wedding night in a proper hotel, a luxury Violet had not experienced in years. Nate carried her over the threshold of their room, both of them laughing, and set her down gently. "Hello, wife," he said, his hands framing her face. "Hello, husband." The word felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. What followed was tender and sometimes clumsy. Two people learning each other in the most intimate way possible. But it was also beautiful, full of whispered words and gentle touches, Nate constantly checking to make sure she was all right, that this was what she wanted. Violet had never felt more cherished, more seen, more whole. When they finally fell asleep tangled together in the soft bed, she felt like her life had truly begun. They left Fort Smith a few days later, riding southwest toward the Oklahoma Territory and their new home. The journey took 2 weeks, but Violet did not mind. She was with Nate, and every mile brought them closer to their future. The property was everything the listing had promised. The cabin was small but solid, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it sat on a gentle rise with a view of rolling grassland. The creek ran clear and cold through the eastern edge of the property, lined with cottonwood trees. The barn needed a new roof, but the frame was sound. And the land itself was beautiful, wide and open, perfect for horses. "It is perfect," Violet breathed, standing in front of the cabin and looking out over what was now theirs. "It will do for a start." Nate wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "We will make it into something amazing." They dove into the work with enthusiasm. Nate focused on getting the barn fixed up and building corrals while Violet made the cabin livable, scrubbing years of dust and grime, patching cracks, making curtains from fabric she bought in town. She planted a garden, vegetables and herbs and flowers near the front door because life needed beauty as well as practicality. Nate made his first trip to Texas to buy Mustangs, and Violet surprised herself by how much she missed him during the 2 weeks he was gone. When he returned with a string of 15 wild horses, she ran out to meet him and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around. "I missed you," he said against her hair. "I missed you too, so much." She had not expected marriage to feel like this, like having a piece of herself walking around outside her body. Together, they worked to gentle the Mustangs, and Violet discovered she had a knack for it. She was patient where Nate was bold, soft where he was firm, and between them, they made a good team. By the end of summer, they had sold 8 of the horses to the Army and local ranchers, making enough profit to buy supplies for winter and start plans for expanding the barn. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the grassland, Violet leaning against Nate's shoulder, planning their future out loud. "I want to go into Guthrie next week and talk to the shopkeeper about selling some dresses," Violet said one night. "I have been sewing in the evenings and I have 3 finished now. If they sell well, maybe I can build up enough business to eventually rent a shop space." "You should." Nate kissed the top of her head. "Your work is beautiful. People will want it. And I was thinking we should add on to the cabin before winter really sets in. Maybe another room for when—" She trailed off, suddenly shy. "For when what?" But Nate was smiling like he knew exactly what she meant. "For when we might need it for children." Violet looked up at him. "I know we said we would wait, but it has been 6 months now and we are settled, and I think I am ready if you are." Nate's expression went soft and tender. "I am ready if you are. I would love to have children with you, Violet, a whole house full of them if you are willing. Maybe we start with 1 and see how it goes." But she was smiling as she said it. They went inside and made love on the bed Nate had built with his own hands, in the home they had created together, and Violet felt grateful for every hard thing she had survived that had led her to this moment. Winter came, cold and hard, but the cabin stayed warm and the horses stayed fed. Violet's dresses sold well in Guthrie, and she began taking custom orders. Nate made another buying trip in the spring and came back with 20 horses this time, growing their business. And Violet's belly began to swell with new life. The pregnancy was hard at first, morning sickness that was not confined to mornings, exhaustion that made even simple tasks feel monumental. But Nate was attentive and patient, taking over her chores without complaint, making sure she rested and ate well. As the months passed and her belly grew rounder, Violet would catch him staring at her with such wonder and love that it made her breath catch. "I cannot believe we made a person," he said one night, his hand splayed over her stomach. "That is our baby in there." "I am very aware," Violet said dryly, shifting to try to find a comfortable position. "The baby is currently using my ribs as a jumping-off point." Nate laughed and kissed her belly. "You hear that, little one? Your mama says to settle down in there." The baby kicked hard against his hand, and they both laughed. Their son was born on a cold morning in February, delivered by a midwife from town with Nate pacing anxiously outside the bedroom. When the midwife finally called him in and placed the tiny, red-faced bundle in his arms, Nate's eyes filled with tears. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Violet, he is perfect." They named him James after Nate's father, and he became the center of their world. Nate proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle, happy to walk the floor with a crying baby at 3 in the morning. Violet, exhausted and overwhelmed but happier than she had ever been, watched her husband cradle their son and thought about how close she had come to never having this. If those thieves had not robbed her, she never would have needed help. If Nate had not walked into the Silver Star that night, she never would have found someone who believed her. The worst thing that had ever happened to her had led her to the best thing in her life. "What are you thinking about?" Nate asked one evening when James was a few months old. The baby was asleep in his cradle, and they were sitting on the porch watching the stars come out. "How lucky I am," Violet said honestly. "How all the bad things led me here to this life. I would not change any of it now. Even getting robbed, even that, because it brought you to me." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You saved me, Nate." "No," he kissed her forehead. "We saved each other." Over the next few years, their little ranch grew and prospered. Nate's reputation as a horse trainer spread, and people came from as far as Wichita to buy his stock. Violet's dress business grew too, and she eventually rented a small shop in Guthrie where she employed 2 other women to help with the sewing. They added 3 more rooms to the cabin and a proper front porch and painted it white with blue shutters because Violet had always wanted a white house. James was joined by a daughter they named Rose, after the mare that had carried Violet on that first journey. Rose had her father's gray eyes and her mother's determination, and she could ride before she could properly walk. 2 years later came another son, Samuel, quiet and thoughtful, happiest when watching the horses in the pasture. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, horses that got sick, accounts that did not pay. There were arguments because 2 strong-willed people living together could not agree on everything. There were nights Violet lay awake worrying about money or sick children or all the things that could go wrong. But there was also so much joy. Watching Nate teach James to rope. The first time Rose sold a dress she had sewn herself. Samuel's delighted laugh when a foal nuzzled his hand. Sunday dinners with all of them around the table that Nate had built, holding hands while they gave thanks. Quiet evenings on the porch after the children were asleep, Nate's arm around her, both of them marveling at what they had created. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nate surprised Violet with a trip back to Fort Smith. They left the children with a trusted neighbor and rode out together, retracing that first journey when they had barely known each other. "Why did you want to come back here?" Violet asked as they rode into town, because this is where our story started. I wanted to remember." Nate reached over and took her hand. "I wanted to stand in that saloon and thank God or fate or whatever it was that made me walk through that door the night you needed help." They visited the Silver Star, which was under new management now. The place looked smaller than Violet remembered, shabbier. They stood at the bar where they had first met, and Nate ordered 2 whiskeys, the good stuff. "To us," he said, raising his glass. "To believing in each other." "To us," Violet echoed, and they drank. They spent the night in the same hotel where they had their wedding night and made love like newlyweds, still discovering new things about each other after all these years. In the morning, they rode back toward home, toward their children and their ranch and their life. As they crested the hill that gave them their first view of the property, Violet reined in Rosie and just looked. The white cabin with its blue shutters. The big barn with its newly painted red roof. The corrals full of horses. The garden bursting with late summer vegetables. Laundry flapping on the line. All of it theirs, built from nothing but hard work and faith in each other. "Happy?" Nate asked, pulling up beside her. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," Violet said honestly. "You know, I used to think my life ended that night in the saloon when those men robbed me. Like everything good had been taken away and all I had left was surviving. And now I know that was just the beginning. The old life had to end so the new one could start." She looked at her husband, at this man who had seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up, who had believed in her when nobody else would, who had given her partnership and love and a family and a home. "I love you, Nate Hollis. I will love you until the day I die and probably after that too." "I love you too, Violet Hollis. Always have, always will." He leaned over in the saddle and kissed her, soft and sweet, a promise renewed. They rode down the hill together toward home, toward their children running out to greet them, toward another evening meal around their table, toward another night in their bed, toward all the ordinary, extraordinary moments that made up a life well lived. The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and ahead of them their future waited, bright and full of promise. Violet had been drugged and robbed and left with nothing. But she had found a cowboy who believed her, and in believing her, had given her everything. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best ones. Sometimes losing everything meant finding what really mattered. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, love found you in the most unexpected places and changed your life forever. And they lived, happy and together, building their dreams side by side for all the years that followed. Their ranch became known throughout the territory, their children grew up strong and kind, and Violet's dress shop eventually expanded into 3 locations. They grew old together, still holding hands on their porch in the evenings, still grateful for the chance encounter that had brought them together. When people asked Violet about her life, about how she and Nate had met, she always smiled and said it was a story about believing. He had believed in her when she had nothing, and that belief had given her everything. And she had believed in him, in the possibility of love and partnership, and a life built on trust and respect and devotion. It was a simple story, really. A saloon girl and a cowboy, 2 people who found each other at exactly the right moment. But simple did not mean any less profound. They had taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into the greatest blessing of both their lives. And that, Violet thought, was the real magic of it all.